All right, well, I don't think I need to tell anyone in this room that trust and transparency are major issues today. And with scandals coming out around those issues all the time, I don't think anyone thinks that they're going away, but that they're probably just evolving. So to start things off, let's hear from you guys about what you think transparency means.
You start first, Julie, please.
Beauty last. Go.
Okay. Well, look, I think and I feel bad about sitting here because I've got two of my biggest competitors staring at the back of my head, so I don't like this. But anyway, look, I think trust is the cornerstone of which our whole industry pivots. And about 30 years ago, we started a media agency called Zenith, which at the time was the first media agency to be created. And it was based around a simple premise that, clients were actually demanding more resource and better talent and scaling our leverage in a more effective way. And obviously, the industry has gone through some huge changes since then, and the scope of work that we do has changed exponentially. But I think, for me, transparency is doing what's best for our clients and not what is best necessarily for us, and from a commercial point of view. And that was the sort of founding tenet of when we founded Tenant all those years ago. And I'd like to think that simple mantra works as well today as it did then. And I think if you try and put everything through through the lens of the client, in terms of how we deal with them, about how we operate with full disclosure, about how everything is opted in, about how we have clear contractual language. And I think for me, that transparency is really through the lens of how the client sees us. And I think this point of transparency, which we took for granted 30 years ago, we're now having to sit on podiums like this and explaining what we mean. But I think trust is absolutely the cornerstone of our business.
Thanks.
I would totally agree. To be completely transparent to everybody in the audience, Steve actually was once my boss. So we're going to practice transparency. Yeah. He's one of my favorite, too. Depends on what he's done that day to see if he slides or he goes back up. But transparency to me now on the client side, I think the financial part of it is really important. But I think there's so much more to it. And I actually looked up on my handy-dandy phone the definition of transparency, which is about shining through and allowing light. And what that means to me is there's no doors, no walls. There is nothing that barricades me from you. And with that, I think that's the foundation of any relationship. I think when we talk about trust, I think there's also truth. And truth is such a powerful word, even if it might hurt you or me for the moment. And I think that is, the whole client-agency relationship, it used to be about a relationship. And I think that's where it has to get back to. I think we have to get to that place where we quit talking and worrying about who's Zooming who when it comes to invoicing. I think it is about getting back to the foundations of a relationship, and that's what transparency is.
Steve, how did the A&A investigation affect your operations and the relationships you have with your clients?
Yeah, that is a very good question because, it's worth just explaining for those who don't know, we created Publicis Media almost exactly 2 years ago. And, as we were putting our launch plans together and we were sort of working out how we were going to come to market and the clients and the brands, etc., the A&A had been discussing and had announced this sort of investigation into our business. And obviously that was probably, at the time, a huge distraction for us because we had many of our clients, well, I'm disclosed, 34 of our major clients, as a result of the A&A investigation, decided to do an audit through their concerns. And of course, many of these clients were new to me and new to us. And one or two of those clients, I think probably well known to the audience here, actually paused their activity. And it was, at the time, you could imagine it was a huge issue for us because we're trying to put a new organization in place. And that lasted right the way through the summer of 2016, which was our first year of organization. The interest, and we were doing pitches actually at the time, I'm sure Julie will tell you, we actually were in the middle of a global review for the Fox business. And actually, the end of that A&A audit process actually resulted in all 34 of those clients satisfactorily giving us a pass and a clear audit. in terms of the investigations they had into us, and many of those were very deep forensic audits. And actually, initially thinking this is going to be a huge distraction and encumbrance, it turned out to be a blessing, because what it actually did is said to those clients, actually, you know, this company that, you know, a third party has put some fallacious statements about practices that are going on. These are not practices which are being conducted at Publicis Media and the various brands that we have, and actually has given us a much firmer platform in terms to expand our services. And I know during the previous sessions and others, you know, we've heard about the apparent encroachment from the digital platforms. We've heard a little bit about the consultancies coming to eat our lunch. And in fact, what we've seen is this has given us a far better confidence platform to go to our clients, and that position of trust. And this wasn't, I'm not telling you this was, I was certain this would be the outcome, but the result is actually a far more confident relationship with our clients who trust us across those audits, and has given us an ability to use that, you know, those audits to actually have a much better line of growth, both of those clients and others. So. Yeah, it was a process that was enormously destabilizing and time-consuming, but one actually has put us in much better state with our clients.
Hey, this question's for both of you. How are you thinking about using consumer data given the scandals like Facebook, Cambridge Analytica, and around GDPR right now?
I'll take this one. Can I see a show of hands? Who here has had to talk about the Facebook, Cambridge Analytica situation? Hands? Put your computers down, put your phones down. I want to see your hands. All right. I used to teach at USC, so I'm going to dock a grade letter off some of you folks. So I get this question a lot. And I'm going to tell you something today that you don't know, but I'm not going to tell you quite yet. We're going to kind of roll into it. This is the big challenge of trust with what's going on with these guys. When it was announced, I went and talked to my boss, who is our CEO and chairwoman, Stacy Snyder. And we actually had this really great conversation about it. We talked about the importance of our fans, customers, trusting our advertising. But we had a really big decision to make that day. And that decision we had to make that day is my team had actually built a chat bot for Deadpool for the Facebook Messenger platform. So we killed it. We killed all the development funds that we put into it, because what we'd built was actually a fun toy. So for those, another show of hands, who's seen Deadpool? Excellent. We have a new one coming out. Girl's got to work, even if she's on stage. We built it as a toy. It was something for our fans to play with. It was something for those of you that raised your hands, thank you again, the Merc with a mouth, right? It was a perfect platform for it. But what we couldn't afford to do was lose trust with our fans. Because the first thing that was going to come up in the middle of this was going to be, oh, well, what data are they getting? When all we really did was build a toy, right? Build something for our fans to play with. I think that what they're dealing with is part of a growth for a company. They obviously grew very fast. This is part of their journey. And they're going to decide who they want to be. And so I think we'll see. And then based on who they decide that they want to be coming out of this, then we'll decide who we need to be with them. So there's a little bit of a jury still out, because we need to see what their decision is.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I talked about trust being at the cornerstone of our business, and it's you know, from where I sit at it, it's quite simple. We just put things through the lens of what our clients would expect of us, and to be open and trusting. And I think some of these new platforms, you know, they've got, you know, similarly, they've got one audience, and that's the people that use their platform or their service. And as we all know, if you lose trust, if we'd have lost, if a couple of clients had called into question those in A&A investigation, trust would have been completely destroyed. And it would have taken a change in management or a change in organization to return that trust. And, one of the reasons I think when we talk about these digital platforms, distributors, potentially disintermediating our business, I don't see that as a huge short-term challenge or threat. And I think the bigger priority, as Julie has articulated, is really to understand what these companies are about. Because here are companies, and we talk about Google and Facebook and others, they started out thinking that they were not going to be ad-funded. And they've only got one source of revenue, which is advertising. And it's 90% of all the growth that we generate. And while at the moment we do not have advertisers who are pausing because of this most recent issue, we all know that people are deleting their Facebook. And that's a calls into question trust. And, for a company that is a 500 billion company, I think there's a huge challenge right now at the moment about how they're very quickly going to come forward with full disclosure and re-establish that trust, because there are some big question marks in my mind and in the mind of people and consumers, not necessarily the advertisers, about those platforms.
Yeah, we've had a number of top executives at our company that have deleted their Facebook and Instagram profiles.
I've heard of that too. Okay, so what do you guys think, and I'll open it up to both of you, about media agencies owning client data?
No. Next question. No, I'm just kidding. No, that's not okay. And because of your last question, it's not okay. We've built a customer database at Fox. And we have 25 million moviegoers, and it's an anonymized database. And talk about trust. It's so important for us that we put it in contracts where we cannot share that data. And I think that the more people that have access to customer data, the more risks that you run having it exposed. I can't even begin to describe the security of the firewalls that we have in place because of this database, so no one gets this information, and granted, it's anonymized. I am a huge proponent of having full access for our agencies. I don't think you should possess it, but I think you should have access and work with us with our tools. Mm-hmm. But I think ownership is dangerous.
Mm-hmm. Ironically, given that we have within Publicis Group, this is not cross Publicis Media, but we have three real, what we call game changers that we are focusing our businesses. One is on the creation of dynamic creativity. Two is about technology as a strategy. And thirdly, it's about data. And if we are going to deliver those three areas, we're going to have to build out a really significant data capability. And certainly for us, we're fortunate by timing, actually, because I mentioned that I happened to be part of the first agency 30 years ago, and everyone said, oh, it must be first to be a pioneer. Well, it was all it did was allowed everybody else and some of our smart competitors to pivot around and learn from our mistakes. And actually, when we launched Publicis Media, as Mark Pritchard called it out, on my very first day in the role, we lost the P&G business in the US. And so that gave us an opportunity to look at the way that we were operating and saying, look, we've got to build a capability which builds on the needs of our clients. So there are many practices that we decided we were not going to embark on. We decided not only is trust an important platform for us, but when we set out our positioning, it was around trust, talent, and transformation. Those are the three pivots around the three areas of focus for Publicis Media on a global basis. But actually, one of the things we recognized that we thought clients are not going to accept for us to own the data. So that's exactly what we've built. We are building a platform called Publicis People Cloud, and for those clients, they will own that data. Our role is to interpret that data, so we are not pulling data into a black box. So actually, ironically, on that point, even though it's one of the three key facets of our business, I ironically agree with Julie. We don't think we should own that data. So if we're using the interpretation of that data and the client decides to go elsewhere, they take that data with them.
Okay. So my next question is, Zenith retained the planning and buying business of 21st Century Fox after they put the account up for review in 2016. Julie, why did the company choose to stay with Zenith? And I guess this question could be for either of you, just how does the company and the agency go about addressing and working out any trust or transparency issues that arise?
Selecting an agency when you are in my shoes is actually an emotional decision. I don't work for procurement. I'm not a spreadsheet jockey. It's an emotional decision. We are driven in emotional decisions by our prejudices, our needs, our wants. So during the review, I made a list under each agency of all their attributes. And no, Cass, and you did not get a copy of it. That was mine. And the number one word, the top word to describe Zenith was probably one of the most unsexy words in the scheme of words, in the world of flowery speak. But the number one word was earnest. And earnest is such a powerful word. It's so powerful that it's understated. And it means trust. It means those important things about the foundation of any relationship. Because from the time of when I worked for you, and then when I worked with you, you were always trustworthy. And that was crucial. What I will tell you, where everybody got an F, was multicultural. I saw more white people, I saw more men walk up on a stage than I need to see in a lifetime. And I think it's really important. And I do believe that agency has changed since in the last 2 years. But what's so important to our business is that our foundation of our customers are multicultural. They are the movie business. And we need that. We need a bit of everybody. And yes, I practice what I preach. I have probably the most diverse group on the lot. And I think that, and I hope that, the ones I know, it seems like, have changed. And I hope everyone else is as well, because we're not going to move forward as an industry if we don't.
Okay, so I'll try and answer the easy part. So, look, I mean, I think, you know, for the audience here, for the 4As, I don't know how everybody else feels, but I feel extraordinarily optimistic about the opportunity we've got. I mean, our business, which went from a pure buying-only business, you know, I look at the scope and the scale of things that we are doing, and we have the most fantastic opportunity to build relationship with our clients. Less than half our revenue now globally comes from media planning and buying, and we are helping clients through areas like content, dynamic creative, sponsorship, analytics, econometrics, data management, etc. And I'd like to think that that business is going to continue to grow. We've heard from Mark Pritchard and every single client. Every single one of our clients' business is disrupted. I'm sure the most overused word of the 2 days. And they're looking for a partner who can help them in that transformation. And I really think that us, people here, have got the most fantastic opportunity to step up to that plate. And you will never hear myself, or I hope most of my colleagues, going to say, we are the best at this. But I think if we can work with our clients to provide a service through the lens, and I like the way Julie says, she never actually worked for me. I think that would be a slightly exaggeration. I've always worked for Julie, even when I was her boss, as you can probably tell. And But I think in the guise of of what with the opportunity we've got, we have got the most fantastic opportunity. Our business last year, just in the media side, we added 2,000 additional people around the world, and there's not many of our clients who are doing that, and that is generally because our clients are entrusting us to do more with their business. Obviously, the area which is not so satisfying is Julie's F, and I think she would probably say today our business would get better than an F. I'm certainly not going to ask her what it would be, and it's a real issue for us, And I was saying to one of my colleagues earlier that we all recognise and that it's a business imperative, and Julie talks about the people she's trying to reach, and we need to have that same diversity as her audiences in our business. And it's a huge challenge. I could sit here and tell you all the things that we're doing. We've got some amazing programs, particularly reach out to universities in the US. I could talk about programs where we've won assignments, and we've had to guarantee and commit to a certain level of diversity and inclusion, and I see how we've completely exceeded all of those. But our industry, I think, has a real issue, and there are many reasons for that. I think it's one of the issues is simply where we're based. That we are in major conurbations, which are very expensive. And our industry is not well known to lots of young people, and so it's sort of socially excluded to many young people. And then we have a problem because our main employment bases are in New York and London and Paris, and many young people simply can't afford to live in these cities unless they're getting parental support. So we start with some huge encumbrances from a multicultural, from economic, from social. So I could sit here and say, we're making the most fantastic progress. We are making progress. But this is an issue which I must say we are trying our best to resolve. It is not going to be resolved as quickly as I would like.
Okay, Julie, I'm going to throw this one to you. What do you think still needs fixing with the current kind of typical media agency financial model?
I think my answer may actually surprise you a bit. And I think that the financials are so broken. And I'm coming at it from a different place. I'm not going to sit up here and say, I want to pay less, I want to pay less. Pay less. Payless is a shoe store. Payless is not an advertising agency. And the old model was based on a set of rules, and a set of rules that are completely obliterated. And I think in this world today, where we have more complexities than we've ever had, it is harder than it's ever been. It's also most exciting than it's ever been. That the last thing I think we have to do is go to an agency and say, oh, but I want to pay you less to do a harder job. That just doesn't make sense. There is a logical problem with that. And then clients get upset, because again, I've been on both sides. Clients get upset if they're not getting the service, but there is also a reality in life. How many times have you said, you get what you pay for? Well, guess what you do? You get what you pay for. And so the more procurement or whomever drives those costs down, the less you're going to get. And I think that is a real problem, a real huge problem in our business. No matter how the structure is, creative ways to structure it, but there has to be a change in that. You're welcome, Steve King.
Thank you for that, Julie. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I could spend hours talking about this because, like in one sense, we know that we've got a corporate responsibility to transform our business and to make it more efficient. Our clients' business are squeezed. They're in low growth categories, virtually every one of those. And we have got to be really dynamic about the way we're managing our business. So huge areas for us about where we're nearshoring, offshoring. We are, as many people here will know, we are trying to leverage our offshore centers in India, where we have 10,000 incredible graduates, STEM graduates, building experiential design for US and British clients at scale, more effectively, more efficiently, and, as it happens, also more cost efficiently as well. and we're trying to leverage all of those areas. So we are trying to respond, and we're going to be doing a lot more of those things because we know that we can't afford to stand still. There's huge resources and energies going into that. To Julie's point, you're not Payless. We are not a bank. And, I can tell you one of the decisions that I have not regretted is those clients were simply trying to have lowest cost denominator. Stepping out of those reviews and those pitches, and many people here in this room will know which they are, is one of the best decisions we've made. I've not once regretted that, because there might be some short-term headlines, but it is the road to economic penury and pain by doing that. We are doing an amazing service, I think, for our clients, and it's our job to value those. And if they're not, they're going to go elsewhere. It's fortunately an extremely competitive market. There are very large competitors, there are very small competitors, and it's a free market. And we expect to be paid if we deliver. And we expect to have a completely open, trusting relationship with our clients. But we are not a bank. And we cannot expect to be funding clients' activities. And we've all, I'm sure, sat here looking at situations where clients are expecting us to take on projects because they think that we can absorb the financial pain.
We are running out of time, but I think I have time for one more question. Okay, so Julie, you played a key role in the development of Fox's first DMP, shifting a big portion of the network's digital media mix into programmatic. What are the major problems still with DMP, and how did you go about creating a system that can be trusted?
I did not build a DMP. Anybody here build a DMP? You guys have a DMP? Everybody has a DMP, right? I so love that you kept that question, because I know you know that I didn't do that. We strategically made the decision to skip that. We skipped it because customers aren't numbers, customers are people. And in our business, we needed to understand them better. We needed to understand the multidimensionalness, I don't know if that's a word, but today it is, of storytelling and the type of stories that people want to hear. And the other thing with data is we needed it to help us break 100-year-old institutional beliefs and behaviors. I'm going to tell you a really quick story. I know we're running out of time, but like a minute or two is not going to kill anybody, right? Nobody's going to die? Okay. And I'm going to give you an example. So for The Greatest Showman, anybody see Greatest Showman? Hugh Jackman? Yeah, this is me, right? Great song. So I'm going to tell you what the institutional behavior was. Last March, we all sit in a room and talking about, okay, Greatest Showman. What kind of comps, what comparable films do we have for Greatest Showman? Around the room, everybody guess yourself. We're going to play some games. We're really not, but the movies that came up were Pitch Perfect, makes sense, La La Land, and then we threw in Les Mis. So once we started looking at our data, and we've built a lot of tools on top of our customer database. We work very closely with Google so we can see people who watch trailers. We work really closely with Twitter so we can see what people say. And when we actually looked at what consumers said based on their purchase behavior, the #1 film was Cinderella. The second film was Beauty and the Beast. The film after that was Hidden Figures. And then Wonder, and then we certainly saw Pitch Perfect in the other films. So then we checked it after the movie opened. And after the movie opened, when we looked at who actually purchased tickets, we saw the same movies. But let me tell you the importance of understanding what movies that they were and how important it is to our business, from what we make to when we date it to how we market it, is when you listen to the data, which is effectively listen to what your customers are telling you, it was telling us that the stories that they wanted to hear were stories about loving the unlovable, stories about underdogs. And so when we looked at that and we looked in the mirror, and that mirror is our film, we thought, that's it. What they want to know and hear about and love are the freaks, the oddities, the bearded lady, Tiny Tim. They wanted them to come out of the shadows behind the curtains and be who they really are. That's what data told us. That's what I built. I didn't build a DMP.
Follow that.
That's right. Speaking of love the unlovable, meet Steve King. I'm just kidding. I've been trying to find some Steve jokes here as much as possible.
I think this is a part of the Q&A. Yeah.
We are woefully behind.
Sorry.
I know. But thank you all for joining us. And everybody, thank you for the panel.